Lieutenant Colonel Dana Whitaker had driven this stretch of Virginia highway a dozen times. The trees blurred past her windows like shadows, and her thoughts raced faster than her SUV. She wasn't just an officer. She was the woman the Pentagon trusted to expose the cancer festering inside America's law enforcement, organized hate. On her encrypted laptop was proof, hard evidence linking white supremacist groups to uniformed officers across multiple states. Dana adjusted the volume on her headset as a call buzzed in. It was General Royce, her direct superior. Colonel Whitaker, his voice was tight, urgent. "The President's seen your report. He's authorizing full clearance. But be careful. You're not invisible." "I know, sir. I'll be at Norfolk Base in less than an hour." She hung up, heart steady. The stakes weren't just political, they were personal. Black military officers were being targeted in traffic stops, their careers ruined, and worse, their lives stolen. The files she carried named names. She had to get there. Then came the sirens. Blue and red lights lit up behind her. Dana looked at the speedometer. She wasn't speeding. No signals missed, no reason to stop her. Still, she pulled over. She knew protocol. Hands on the wheel. ID and military badge ready. Calm voice. The officer approached slowly, hand already resting on his holster. He was young, white, tense. His name tag read R. Collins. "License and registration," he said coldly. Dana nodded, speaking clearly. "Lieutenant Colonel Whitaker, United States Army, on official business. Here's my—" "I said license, not your resume." Something in his tone sliced through her calm. This wasn't routine. Then she saw it, the way his eyes never left her skin, never once glanced at her uniform. This wasn't a stop, this was a setup. Dana's instinct screamed. Every cell in her body had been trained to assess threat levels. Collins wasn't nervous. He was waiting for a mistake, for an excuse. Her military badge gleamed on the dashboard, untouched. She moved slowly, narrating her actions. "I'm reaching for my license, right hand only." Collins's jaw tightened. "You military folks think you're above the law." Her fingers brushed the leather wallet, but she froze when he shouted, "Keep your hand where I can see it." Adrenaline surged. "I am unarmed, officer. I'm complying." He radioed something she couldn't hear, code words. Then the tone changed. "I said out of the vehicle. Now." She stepped out, back straight, years of dignity and command in her posture, but Collins didn't see a lieutenant colonel. He saw a target. Her rank didn't protect her from his hate. He advanced, hands still on his weapon. "Turn around. Hands on the hood." Dana paused. "Sir, I must insist you contact base command. I am on a classified—" "Don't lecture me." Without warning, he shoved her against the SUV, forcing her arm back. Pain shot through her shoulder. "That's unlawful force. I demand—" A flash, then 3 loud pops. The first bullet shattered her side window. The second tore into her back. The third hit her stomach. Dana dropped instantly, her body folding like paper, breath gone, heat searing her insides. As her vision blurred, she heard his voice. Officer involved shooting, suspect lunged, request medical, lied. He was building his story. As blood pooled beneath her, Dana whispered, "Laptop, Pentagon." And then everything went dark. The ambulance sirens wailed, but time stretched. Dana drifted in and out of consciousness, memories flashing like broken film. Her first salute, graduation at West Point, her twins, Zoe and Marcus, running into her arms after deployment. She wasn't ready to die. Officer Collins stood nearby, untouched, calm. He repeated his version to dispatch, making himself the victim. She reached fast, looked like a weapon, but inside the vehicle, Dana's dashcam recorded everything. From the clear commands she followed to the moment he fired, unprovoked. Minutes later, another cruiser arrived. Officer Ramirez stepped out and froze. That's a military officer." Collins shrugged, didn't know. She was aggressive. Ramirez looked into the SUV. The uniform, the ID, the sealed Pentagon envelope, it was all there. He knelt beside Dana. Her blood soaked his gloves. "She's alive! Get medics now!" But Collins didn't move. Instead, he kicked something under the SUV, Dana's phone. Ramirez noticed. Eyes locked. "You trying to hide evidence?" "No body cam footage. It malfunctioned," Collins said flatly. But Ramirez's camera was rolling. Everything, his arrival, Dana bleeding, Collins' nonchalance, was being saved. When the EMTs arrived, Dana barely clung to life, her hand clenched around a blood-stained paper with one word scrawled, "Proof." The paramedics rushed her into the ambulance. Ramirez followed, fists clenched. Back at the precinct, Collins typed his report, non-compliant subject, reached for object, feared for life. He ended it with, "Officer responded accordingly." But this time, the system wouldn't let it slide. This time, the Pentagon would answer. General Royce slammed his fist on the conference table. She was shot, on duty, by a patrol officer? The room fell silent. Staffers and senior officers sat stiff, uncertain. Royce turned to his aide. "And he's still walking free?" The aide nodded grimly. "Civilian jurisdiction. They haven't pressed charges." The general stood. "Get me the president." Half an hour later, the Oval Office phone rang. President Marshall listened in silence. Then, "Tell the Pentagon, this is war, not just on corruption, on hate. I want names, connections, everything she had." Within hours, federal agents descended on the hospital. Dana was in critical condition. 3 surgeries, a punctured lung, internal bleeding. But she was alive. Barely. Her husband, Malcolm Whitaker, stood outside the ICU, clutching their twins. Rage burned in his eyes, but so did fear. She's fought in 2 wars, brought soldiers home. And this is what nearly kills her. A traffic stop. Agents secured Dana's SUV. The dashcam was intact. Footage retrieved. Collins' voice, condescending, hostile, violent. Dana's compliance, clear as day. Then gunfire. Then silence. The footage leaked. And the internet exploded. Hashtags, protest videos, veterans in uniform crying on TikTok. She did everything right. Military leaders issued statements of support. Black officers from across the country shared similar encounters. Collins? Placed on administrative leave. But it was too late. The Pentagon's task force released the report Dana had nearly died for. Dozens of officers tied to hate groups, secret online forums, shared tactics, names, locations. This wasn't just one bad cop. It was a pattern. The president signed an executive order. Military and federal authorities would jointly investigate any law enforcement shooting of active duty personnel. Collins wasn't just going to face trial. He was about to face America's wrath. The streets filled with signs, "Justice for Colonel Whitaker." She served. They shot. Honor in uniform. Hate in a badge. News anchors led with it. Dana's face, strong, bruised but dignified, filled every screen. Inside the ICU, Dana woke briefly. Malcolm's tearful voice grounded her. "You're alive, baby. You held on." She blinked. "Laptop?" He nodded. "The Pentagon has it." A nurse leaned in. "Ma'am, the nation's behind you." But outside, the war was only just beginning. Federal agents questioned Collins. He claimed trauma, confusion, fear. His lawyer called it a regrettable mistake. The local sheriff, however, had another tone. "We support Officer Collins. The military has no business interfering." The press conference went viral, for all the wrong reasons. Memes exploded. Rage ignited. Black veterans demanded accountability. White allies joined. Celebrities spoke out. "America failed one of its best," said a late-night host. She wore the flag while he wore hate. General Royce ordered a federal tribunal. Collins was arrested, charged with attempted murder, obstruction, and civil rights violations. Dana, still healing, recorded a message from her hospital bed. "This is not just about me. It's about every soldier who wonders if their country loves them back." The video hit 10 million views in 2 hours. The trial date was set. Military prosecutors stepped in. Collins would not just face state charges, but federal counts of treason for targeting a classified officer carrying national intelligence. No bail, no escape. Behind closed doors, agents traced Collins' online history, chats with other officers, coded language, racist memes, even a hit list of black military officials. Dana's name was circled. This wasn't a coincidence. It was an assassination attempt. And now the whole world was watching. The courthouse was surrounded by military veterans and civil rights activists. Rows of uniforms stood beside civilians holding candles, photos, and flags. Inside, the trial of Officer Ryan Collins began under tight security. Prosecutors wasted no time. They opened with dashcam footage, the moment Collins pulled the trigger. Silence filled the courtroom. Dana's uniform was visible, her calm, measured tone undeniable. The jury watched as Collins fired 3 shots into a woman standing still, hands in the air. The defense claimed Collins feared for his life. "She moved suddenly," his lawyer said. He had seconds to react, but forensic evidence contradicted him. Dana had been shot in the back, twice. Next, the Pentagon cyber team presented chilling evidence. Collins had exchanged encrypted messages with extremist officers across state lines. Jokes about cleaning up ranks, lists of black officials, military symbols defaced with hate speech. Then came the bombshell. A fellow officer testified under oath. We called ourselves the Guardians. It was secret. It started as a joke, memes, forums. But then it turned into something else, something dark. That same officer broke down on the stand. Dana Whitaker was marked, because she exposed us. In the front row, Malcolm gripped Zoe and Marcus's hands. Dana, watching remotely from her hospital bed, didn't blink once. News outlets covered every moment. Millions tuned in. Veterans, politicians, parents wept openly. The prosecution declared, this wasn't an accident. This was treason against a US officer. This was hatred in a badge, targeting a soldier who represented everything good about America. And for once, the nation seemed to listen. Because this wasn't just about Dana Whitaker. It was about a system finally being dragged into the light. Inside the Pentagon, the atmosphere had shifted from silence to resolve. General Royce addressed the media flanked by uniformed officials, black, white, Latino, Asian, all standing in solidarity. The Department of Defense will not be silent, he said. Lieutenant Colonel Dana Whitaker was shot by a domestic enemy, not in a foreign battlefield, but on American soil. He paused. This is not only a criminal matter, it is a matter of national security. The room erupted in questions. Reporters asked, is this an isolated incident? Royce replied, we wish it were. He confirmed, 47 other black service members had reported aggressive or violent traffic stops in the past 2 years. Several had faced suspensions after fabricated civilian complaints. Some had mysteriously died in car accidents that were now being reinvestigated. Congress responded quickly. Senator Green, a combat veteran herself, stood on the Senate floor. This is not politics. This is the survival of our democracy. We cannot allow hate to wear a badge. She introduced the Whitaker Act, proposing a federal review board for any civilian police encounter involving active military personnel. Social media exploded again. Hashtag Whitaker Act now trended globally. Dana, watching from her hospital bed, whispered, keep going. Meanwhile, federal agents raided homes of suspected guardians. Dozens of police officers and former military were arrested, some crying, others defiant. Among the evidence, more hit lists. Black officials' names, addresses, family members. Dana's was highlighted in red. But what no one expected came next. One of the arrested officers confessed, we had help. Inside the military, a silence followed those words. The conspiracy wasn't just in local departments, it had roots deep inside institutions that were sworn to protect the nation, and the real battle had only begun. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Pentagon. An internal investigation was launched immediately. Security clearances were frozen. Background checks reopened. Dana's task force, once seen as radical, was now the core of a national crisis response. Within days, 2 high-ranking officials were placed under arrest. One was a colonel with access to sensitive military movements. He had shared Dana's location the day she was ambushed. The betrayal hit hard. General Royce addressed the press again, jaw clenched. We were infiltrated, and we take responsibility for not seeing it sooner. Back in the hospital, Dana sat upright for the first time in days, tubes still in her arms, pain evident in every breath, but her voice was solid. They didn't just want to scare me, they wanted to erase me. An emotional interview aired that evening. Dana, pale but unshaken, looked directly into the camera. We train to face enemies abroad, but no one warns you about enemies within. Millions watched. Commentators called it one of the most important speeches of the decade. Meanwhile, Officer Collins' trial continued. His face, once smug, now looked drained. His defense fell apart. Emails surfaced, his private chats with the infiltrators. They joked about cleaning house, about Dana being too loud. The jury, made up of veterans, teachers and parents, listened in stunned silence. Outside the courthouse, the nation was changing. Police departments began purging suspected extremists. Anonymous officers came forward, exposing years of abuse and cover-ups. A new generation of cops demanded reform. But one question remained. Who organized it all? The list, the forum, the leak. Someone higher had orchestrated the silence, and that someone was still in the shadows, waiting, watching. After 4 weeks of emotional testimony, damning evidence and national attention, the jury returned. 12 faces sat still as the clerk read aloud. On the count of attempted murder, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to obstruct justice, guilty. On the count of treason against the United States, guilty. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Dana watched from her hospital screen. Her eyes didn't tear, but her husband's did. Officer Collins sat motionless. He showed no remorse. Not when the verdict was read, not when the cameras zoomed in, Not when the judge, a black Vietnam vet, glared down at him. You disgraced your badge. You conspired to silence truth. You tried to kill a soldier carrying the truth. For that, you will face the full weight of justice. The sentence was swift, death by lethal injection, the first treason execution since World War II. Critics called it extreme. Supporters called it overdue. Across the country, debates raged. But one thing was clear, this was no longer just about one cop. The court had sent a message. Hate in uniform would be treated as an enemy of the state. Outside, protesters and supporters alike stood in quiet awe. For once, justice had not tiptoed. Dana's children, Zoe and Marcus, hugged their mother when they returned to the hospital. "You did it, Mom." Dana shook her head. "We all did it. And it's not over, because while one verdict had landed, the system still had cracks. The sentencing made headlines, but it also made enemies. In dark corners of the web, whispers grew. The network had lost a soldier. But the general? He was still out there. 1 year to the day, Dana stood on that same highway, now marked by a bronze plaque and fresh white paint. The words read, "In honor of Lieutenant Colonel Dana Whitaker, shot, silenced, but never defeated." The wind was soft. The air carried silence, but not fear. Standing beside her were veterans, police officers, lawmakers, and her family. Her children held candles, her husband held her hand. The Whitaker Act had passed in full. Every police stop involving military personnel now triggered automatic federal review. Several states began implementing reforms modeled after Dana's testimony. Racist networks across police departments were being dismantled. But Dana's eyes searched beyond the memorial. She still felt it, a presence, a threat not yet named. The man behind the curtain, the general of the hate network, the one who leaked her location, the one who hadn't been caught. She knew he was still out there. After the ceremony, a young black cadet approached her. "Ma'am, I joined because of you." Dana smiled. "Then we're doing something right." She handed him a patch from her old uniform. "Protect the truth, even when it's unpopular." He saluted. As they left, a man stood silently by a tree line. Sunglasses, watchful. Dana noticed. He nodded slightly, then disappeared into the crowd. Was it paranoia or a warning? One battle had ended. But the war for justice in America, the war against hatred in plain sight, was far from over. And Dana Whitaker wasn't stepping down. Not now. Not ever. Inside a secure briefing room, General Royce stared at a digital board full of redacted files and code names. At the center of it all, Project Guardian. The task force Dana once led had reopened the investigation. But now, they weren't just targeting street-level officers. They were tracing the money, the encrypted communications, and the classified access. And all roads led to a name buried deep within Pentagon history, Brigadier General Everett Kincaid. He was retired, decorated, a war hero in public, but buried in a forgotten email server was a trail of messages linking Kincaid to secret recruitment chats, financial transactions to rogue officers, and surveillance logs of black military leaders. Dana's ambush hadn't been a fluke, it had been approved. She stared at the evidence, heart tight but steady. "He signed off on it," she said. "He gave them my route." General Royce nodded. "He's in hiding. Disappeared 2 weeks after the verdict. An arrest warrant was issued. Interpol joined the hunt. Rumors spread. He had fled to a compound in Montana. Or perhaps a private island." Dana appeared on national television that night. "We took down a soldier of hate," she said, "but the general of that army still roams free. And I promise, I will not rest until justice is done." The country held its breath again. Kincaid's name trended globally. Conspiracy theorists erupted. Supporters of Dana demanded answers. The FBI confirmed he had been warned. By someone still inside. The rot hadn't been fully removed. And Dana knew taking down Collins was just the start. To finish this mission, she would have to go deeper. This wasn't just about saving her own name anymore. This was about saving the entire soul of the uniform she wore. 3 weeks after Kincaid vanished, an encrypted message arrived on Dana's classified laptop. No sender, no origin, just a file titled Ghost Eagle Live Target Map. She opened it. It contained satellite images of an isolated facility deep in Idaho's forest region. Surveillance drones confirmed movement, power, guards, heat signatures. This was no cabin retreat. This was a stronghold. And Dana knew Kincaid was inside. General Royce convened a private task force. No press, no leaks. Codenamed Operation Ghost Eagle. The mission involved elite military intelligence, cyber warfare specialists, and 3 SEAL units. Dana insisted on joining. You're still recovering, Royce protested. I was the target. Now I'm the weapon. Royce didn't argue again. They flew under radar. No insignia, no contact with civilian authorities. On the ground, the SEALs approached the facility at dawn. Thermal scans showed at least 10 armed guards. Inside, encrypted servers hummed, files, videos, blacklists. Dana stayed in the mobile ops center, listening in. Then, gunfire. Brief, controlled. 10 minutes later, target secured. Kincaid was dragged out in cuffs, white hair, cold eyes. He stared into the camera and smiled. You think this ends with me? Dana leaned into the comms. No, it ends with every last one of you. The files retrieved inside the compound were staggering. Hundreds of names, officers, judges, even elected officials, all part of a shadow network called the Iron Halo. Their mission? Remove perceived threats to white dominance inside U.S. institutions. Kincaid's arrest was broadcast hours later. Dana stood behind the podium again. Let this be clear. Patriotism is not white. Justice is not negotiable. And our uniforms do not hide cowards. But the war wasn't over. The Iron Halo had just been exposed. And it was everywhere. The files found inside Kincaid's bunker shook the country. Nearly 400 active duty officers were placed under federal review. Over 80 arrested. Dozens of city officials and sheriffs lost their positions. Judges faced ethics panels. Military insiders were dishonorably discharged. Every institution, police, military, federal, had to look in the mirror. Kincaid was charged with treason, conspiracy, attempted murder, and leading a domestic terror operation. His trial was held in a federal security court under classified conditions. Dana testified again. Stronger now. Confident, calm. He used our flag as a disguise, our country as a weapon, and our silence as a shield. Kincaid, unshaken, stared straight at her. You think this stops anything? He sneered. Cut off one head, 2 more grow. The judge wasn't moved. Guilty on all counts. Sentenced, life without parole at a black site federal prison. Across America, new systems were formed. The Whitaker protocols were adopted nationally. Mandatory body cams, third-party investigations, anti-extremist screening for officers and enlistees. Dana was promoted again, now Brigadier General. She led a permanent joint task force to prevent domestic infiltration, but she never celebrated, not fully. Because she knew, evil doesn't sleep, it waits. One evening, after a long debrief, Malcolm sat beside her on the porch. You did it, he said. She shook her head. We started it. She looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, others were watching, plotting, waiting for the world to forget. But now, the world knew her name. And it wasn't done saying it. Dana stood before a crowd of thousands at the Capitol. Veterans, families, students, officials. Her uniform was sharp, medals gleamed under the sun. The Presidential Medal of Freedom pinned to her chest. President Marshall embraced her. You turn pain into power, division into action. As the anthem played, images flashed on nearby screens. Dana bleeding on the road, standing in court, leading arrests, comforting families, raising her voice. Then, silence. Dana stepped up to the podium. I swore an oath at 22, to protect this nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I never imagined the enemy would look like a fellow officer. I never imagined it would be my own country that turned its back. She paused. But I never lost faith, not in the people, not in the mission, not in the power of truth. She looked into the crowd. Justice is not a moment, it is a movement, and it must be protected by every one of us. Applause thundered. Later that night, at home, Zoe showed Dana a message. Mom, they're making your story into a film. Dana smiled softly. Not my story, she said. Our story. As she tucked the twins into bed, her phone vibrated. An alert. Another extremist plot, intercepted. Another task force deployed. She stood, back straight. This wasn't a happy ending, because justice doesn't end, but the world was no longer asleep, and Dana Whitaker, once a target, now a leader, would be the voice that never stopped speaking. The one that reminded America, real patriotism stands for all of us. And real justice, it never quits.